There was this one morning, I remember it like it just happened yesterday. I was sitting at the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at the floor like it owed me an answer. The sun was already up, but I hadn't even brushed my teeth yet. I had spent the first 40 minutes of my day scrolling through Instagram reels and news headlines I wouldn't remember 5 minutes later. And it wasn't a bad morning. That's what made it worse. Nothing catastrophic had happened. No fight with a partner, no health scare, no job loss. It was just another day, in a long, slow drift, through something that looked like life but didn't feel like living. I had a decent job, a roof over my head. My bills were paid. But something in me felt like it was fading. Quietly, slowly. I wasn't in pain, but I wasn't at peace either. Everything felt too easy. Too predictable. I was surrounded by convenience food delivered to my door, climate-controlled everything, entertainment on demand. But with all that comfort, I felt emotionally numb. My body was soft. My mind was scattered. I was exhausted for no reason. I started noticing how I avoided even the smallest discomforts. If the coffee line was long, I'd skip it. If the weather was too hot, I wouldn't walk outside. I lived in a routine designed to avoid challenge. And yet, somehow, I felt constantly overwhelmed, constantly off. One night, I was doom scrolling again and saw a headline. What if everything we think we need is actually making us weaker? It hit me in the chest. I clicked the article. It was a review of a book called The Comfort Crisis. The idea was simple. Almost obvious we've engineered challenge out of our lives, and it's breaking us in ways we don't even see. I bought the book that night, no hesitation. I wasn't expecting a life-altering experience, but deep down, I think I was hoping for something in me that would shake me out of this emotional fog. What happened next wasn't instant. It wasn't like reading one book magically fixed me, but something started to shift. Page after page, I began to see how my pursuit of comfort was actually robbing me of clarity, strength, presence, even joy. I realized I had built a life that was safe, but not satisfying. And that's when I made a quiet, personal decision. I told myself, I'm going to start doing hard things on purpose, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I'm tired of sleepwalking through my own life. That was the real beginning. That moment right there, the line in the sand between who I was and who I wanted to become. This podcast is about what happened after Thathau. The comfort crisis gave me the words for what I was feeling and the tools to do something about it. And maybe, just maybe, if you're feeling the same way I did, this could be your wake-up call too. One of the first big ideas that hit me from the comfort crisis was this. We are too comfortable, and that comfort is quietly destroying us. Now, when I first read that, I kind of laughed. Like, really? That's the crisis? But the more I sat with it, the more it made uncomfortable sense. It wasn't just about physical comfort like having AC or soft couches or food delivery. It was deeper than that. It was about how we'd structured our lives to avoid any kind of discomfort, challenge, or friction. And in doing so, we've made ourselves mentally weak, emotionally dull, and physically fragile. That idea stayed with me. I started noticing how much I was doing it too, how I avoided even the tiniest inconveniences. I'd wait 10 extra minutes for the elevator just to avoid one flight of stairs. I'd quit a workout early if it got hard. If my grocery order was missing one item, I'd just skip cooking and grab fast food instead. Every small challenge became something I would opt out of. And the scariest part? I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was automatic. I remember one particular weekend that made this lesson really click. It was a Saturday, and I had nothing planned. A free day. I should have been excited. But instead, I spent most of it on the couch, switching between Netflix, YouTube, and snacks I didn't even want. By 6 p.m., I felt gross. Not just physically, but mentally foggy, irritable, and empty. like I had wasted something I couldn't get back. That night, I journaled a question. When was the last time I did something hard on purpose? And I couldn't remember. That shook me. So I made a new rule for myself right then and there. Every day, I need to do at least one thing that makes me uncomfortable. Nothing crazy at first, just small shifts. I started with cold showers. Let me tell you, I hated them. That first jolt of icy water felt like punishment. But afterward, I felt awake. Not just in my body, but in my brain. There was this weird mental clarity I hadn't felt in months. Next, I stopped using the elevator. I live on the 4th floor, and walking up the stairs used to feel like a hassle, but it became a tiny daily challenge. Then I began taking walks without headphones. No podcasts, no music, just silence. That silence was loud at first. My thoughts were everywhere, but over time I started to hear myself more clearly. And as I kept adding these discomforts, controlled, manageable discomforts, I started to notice something shocking. I was happier, more alive, more present. I wasn't crushing goals or making dramatic life changes yet, but I felt like I was showing up for my life in a way I hadn't in years. My energy went up, my anxiety went down, even my sleep got better. I also realized that comfort, for me, had become a trap disguised as a reward. It gave me a false sense of security, but no growth. It numbed me, but didn't nourish me. One afternoon, I was at a friend's BBQ, and someone offered me a folding chair. There was only one left, and I waved it off and said, "Nah, I'll stand." They laughed. "You good?" I just smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm practicing being a little uncomfortable." It was a small moment, but it felt like a turning point. I wasn't rejecting comfort out of ego. I was just learning how to be okay with not being okay all the time. And in that space between ease and effort, I was slowly becoming someone I respected again. So, if there's one thing I'd pass on from this lesson, it's this. Comfort isn't bad, but too much of it starves your soul. You don't need to climb a mountain or run an ultramarathon to reclaim your edge. Start with the little things. Take the stairs. Skip the phone for 10 minutes. Choose the harder version of your routine task. Each time you do, you'll get a piece of yourself back. That's what I found. And it all started by simply noticing how much I had been avoiding the very things that could have made me stronger. There's a part in The Comfort Crisis where Michael Easter talks about this idea of Misoja Japanese tradition that involves doing one insanely hard thing each year. Not to break a record, not to post on Instagram, but to challenge your limits so deeply that you never see yourself the same way again. That idea stuck with me. Hard. Because when I look back at my own life, I couldn't find anything that fit that description. Sure, I'd been through hard things, but they'd always happened to me life's unexpected punches. I never chose hard things. In fact, I avoided them at all costs. And here's the truth I didn't want to admit at first. You don't grow from what's easy. You grow from what stretches you, scares you, humbles you. So I asked myself, what's one hard thing I could do on purpose? Now, I wasn't ready to run an ultramarathon or go on a month-long Arctic adventure, but I wanted to find something that felt big to me, something that made my hands sweat a little. The answer came unexpectedly. Hike 20 miles alone in the mountains, in one day. I know for some people that's a weekend hobby, but for me, it was huge. I wasn't an outdoors person. I hated being alone with my thoughts for too long, and I hadn't walked more than 2 miles in years. But the idea of pushing myself past what I thought I could handle it felt right. It felt needed. I spent a few weeks prepping, bought a decent pair of hiking shoes, packed some granola bars and a first aid kit, told a couple of friends where I'd be. And then, on a Saturday morning just before sunrise, I drove out to a nearby national park and started walking. The first few miles were peaceful. The sun coming through the trees, the sound of birds, That fresh smell of dew and dirt, it felt like a scene from a nature documentary. Then mile 6 hit. My feet started to ache. My back tensed up from the weight of my pack. I started to wonder why the hell I was doing this. Mile 10 felt worse. My water was getting low. I was way too aware of how far I still had to go. The inner voice started up. Just turn around. You tried. No one's watching. That voice was loud, real convincing. But I didn't stop. I kept going, one slow, stubborn step at a time. And somewhere around mile 16, something clicked. I was exhausted, sore, sweaty, hungry, and completely present. My brain, usually full of background noise, was quiet. My body, usually disconnected from my thoughts, felt strong. I felt like I had stepped outside the noisy, numbing world I'd been living in, and into something real. When I finally reached the parking lot again, the hike took just over 9 hours. And no lie, I cried. Not from pain, but from this overwhelming sense of, I did that. Not for a medal, not for praise, but because I needed to remind myself I could. That one hard thing, it cracked something open in me. After that day, I stopped thinking of discomfort as the enemy. I saw it as a door, a necessary threshold between who I was and who I wanted to become. I didn't suddenly become fearless, but I became more willing. I started saying yes to things that scared me. I gave a public presentation at work, a thing I'd dodged for years. I went to social events alone without clinging to my phone. I started waking up at 5 a.m. to journal and run before the world was awake. Each of those actions was hard in its own way, but each one made me feel more alive. And oddly enough, the more I did hard things, the less hard life started to feel. So here's what I took from this lesson. Doing hard things on purpose teaches you who you are, and then it teaches you who you could become. Not every hard thing has to be epic. Maybe your misogi is having a tough conversation, or committing to a month without alcohol, or taking that scary first step on a project you've been avoiding for years. Whatever it is, lean in. Say yes to something that stretches you, because comfort won't get you where you're meant to go, but effort might. One of the most surprising things the comfort crisis helped me realize is that discomfort is a doorway to presence. I know that sounds backwards, right? We usually associate discomfort with stress, pain, panic. But the kind of discomfort that Michael Easter talks about, the kind you choose, it actually forces you to come back to the moment in a way comfort never can. And when I really thought about it, I couldn't remember the last time I was fully present. I mean, truly in a moment. No distractions, no background noise, no mental multitasking. Most of my days before this book looked like this. I'd wake up and immediately grab my phone, scroll through emails while brushing my teeth, listen to a podcast while making breakfast, then hop from meeting to meeting, text message to Slack message, bouncing between browser tabs. And by the time I got into bed, I couldn't even tell you what I'd actually done, just that I was exhausted and weirdly unsatisfied. Comfort made that kind of detachment easy. It's cozy to stay distracted. It's safe to numb out. But it also made me feel like I was just watching life instead of living it. So after that hiking challenge I talked about earlier, I decided to try something else. Something a bit more mental. No headphones, no phone, just me and the discomfort of silence. At first, I started small. I'd take my evening walks without music or podcasts. The first few days were brutal. I didn't know what to do with the silence. My brain kept reaching for stimulation. I'd instinctively reach into my pocket for my phone, and remember, it wasn't there. I even caught myself narrating fake conversations in my head just to fill the void. But after about a week, something shifted. The silence stopped feeling like a void. It started to feel like space, like air, like freedom. I began noticing things. The sound of birds, the texture of the wind, The way my footsteps sounded different on gravel than on pavement. It was like I had tuned into a frequency I didn't even know existed before. And it wasn't just outside. Inside, things were happening too. My thoughts became clearer. I'd have random insights pop into my head that I hadn't been able to reach when I was constantly consuming. I'd remember old dreams I had let slip away. I started connecting dots between my habits, my moods, and my behaviors in a way that only stillness could reveal. It was wild. Discomfort wasn't taking me away from myself, it was bringing me back. Another experiment I tried was sitting in stillness, just 10 minutes a day. No phone, no to-do list, no meditating app or how to be mindful YouTube video, just me, breathing. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. The first few sessions I kept checking the clock. Every minute felt like 5. But then, one day I sat there and forgot to check the time. I just was. And when I opened my eyes, I felt more grounded than I had in months. That's when it really clicked. We're not burnt out because we're doing too much. We're burnt out because we never let ourselves be. Discomfort gives us that chance. Whether it's physical, like a workout that pushes you past your limit, or mental, like choosing to sit in silence instead of scrolling it, invites you back into your own body, your own breath, your own presence. Now, whenever I feel overwhelmed or disconnected, I don't reach for comfort anymore. I don't binge a show or order takeout or escape into my phone. I go outside, I walk, I breathe. I find some discomfort because I've learned that discomfort brings me home to myself. And the crazy part? I actually look forward to those moments now. I crave them. I miss them when I go too long without them. So if you've been feeling scattered, distracted, or just plain tired of your own noise, try doing something uncomfortable without distractions. Go for a walk with no phone. Take a cold shower, and don't rush through it. Just sit on your porch and listen. Don't expect fireworks. Expect awkwardness. But after a while, if you're patient, you'll feel it. That quiet click of presence. That subtle but powerful sense that you are right here, right now. And nothing is missing. If there's one thing the comfort crisis helped me see with brutal clarity, it's this. You can't grow if you only live inside what's familiar. We love the familiar. It's safe. It's predictable. It doesn't challenge our identity. But the problem is, the more we cling to what we know, the more we shrink our lives into a very tight, very boring loop. And for a long time, I didn't even realize I was doing that. I stayed in the same job for 6 years, not because I loved it, but because I was good at it. People liked me. I knew what I was doing. I could hit deadlines without thinking too hard. It felt comfortable. But over time, it also started to feel hollow. I'd daydream during meetings. I'd reread the same emails 3 times because I couldn't focus. I told myself I was just tired, or that maybe I needed a vacation. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't tired. I was stuck. And stuckness doesn't go away on its own. It waits until you get brave enough to move. Reading about Easter's journey into the Arctic, doing something completely outside his zone of expertise, lit a fire under me. No, I wasn't about to head off into the wilderness, but I realized I had my own Arctic. Speaking up, sharing ideas, starting things I wasn't sure I could finish. So I made a choice. I volunteered to lead a project at work that I knew would stretch me. It involved presenting ideas to senior leaders, coordinating with different departments, managing moving deadlines. It terrified me, but I said yes. And the first few weeks, they were awful. I second-guessed every email I wrote. My imposter syndrome was on full blast. I spent late nights reading leadership articles and prepping slides no one even asked for. I felt so far outside my comfort zone I thought I might snap. But I didn't. I stretched. And slowly, something shifted. I stopped apologizing for taking space. I started trusting my judgment. I began speaking with more clarity, more conviction. Not because I magically became smarter, but because I stayed in the discomfort long enough for it to turn into strength. One day, after a big presentation, someone from another department messaged me privately. "Hey, that was super inspiring. You seem like someone who actually cares about what we're building." I stared at that message for a good minute. Not because it was flattering, but because it reflected back the version of me I had been trying to become. And it reminded me, growth doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It shows up in quiet moments when you do the thing you once avoided and realize you didn't just survive it, you showed up fully. Since then, I've made it a habit. Say yes to things that scare me a little. Talk to people I usually don't. Try projects where I might fail. Not all of it's glamorous. Some things fall flat. Some moments are still awkward. But the range of who I am has grown. My capacity has expanded. I don't feel like I'm living inside a tiny circle anymore. I feel like I'm drawing new edges every day. If you're listening to this and you feel stuck, maybe the issue isn't that you're doing the wrong things. Maybe you're just repeating the same things. Maybe your next breakthrough lies 1 inch outside what feels normal to you. Here's something I wrote in my journal after that work project wrapped up. Discomfort didn't break me. Familiarity almost did. Let that sit with you. You're more capable than you think. But you'll never find out who you are if you stay inside what you've always known. So go do something weird, something messy, something uncertain. Because out there just outside your comfort is the version of you you've been waiting to meet. Looking back now, it's honestly hard to believe how much of my life I used to live on autopilot. Back then, I wasn't miserable, but I also wasn't alive. I was comfortable. I had my routines. I had my small pleasures. I had everything I thought I needed to be fine. But here's the thing I didn't realize until I stepped outside that shell. Fine isn't a life, it's a holding pattern. Since reading The Comfort Crisis and, more importantly, applying its ideas, my life didn't just change. It woke up. Not overnight. Not with fireworks. But through these slow, quiet shifts that eventually added up to something bigger. First, there was the physical shift. I started moving more on purpose, not just to lose weight or get fit, but to feel capable again. I took the stairs. I walked for no reason. I lifted heavier things. And somehow, in building physical strength, I rebuilt a kind of mental strength too. I felt grounded in my body, not just stuck in my head all the time. Then came the mental clarity. That was unexpected. The more I embraced silence and discomfort, the more I noticed the volume of life turning down and my awareness turning up. I could actually hear my thoughts, recognize my patterns, pause before reacting. I stopped chasing distractions. I stopped avoiding stillness. Emotionally, I started taking up space in ways I never had. I stopped waiting for permission to speak up at work. I stopped avoiding difficult conversations. I even started saying no to things that didn't align with me without guilt. And spiritually, though, I don't talk about this often. I just feel more connected to myself, to the world around me, to something bigger that I can't fully explain, but that I know is real. I find myself sitting in the sunrise more, breathing deeper, noticing the wind, letting silence say things I used to need words for. My relationships got better too, not because I became more charismatic or confident, but because I became more present. When I'm with people now, I'm really with them. No phone in hand. No distracted half-listening. Just real connection. And that's changed everything. At work, I've taken on more responsibility than ever before, and it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like purpose. Like I'm finally growing into the person I always wanted to be, instead of settling for the version of me that was good enough. The best part? I'm not scared of hard things anymore. They still challenge me. They still stretch me. But I welcome them now. And there's a quiet kind of joy in that. Not the loud hype-up kind of joy, but the steady, honest kind. The kind that shows up when you lay your head on the pillow and know you earned your peace that day. Not by avoiding life, but by showing up fully for it. So, yeah, life looks different now. Not because I bought a van and drove across the country. Not because I quit my job and became a monk. But because I stopped letting comfort make all my decisions. I don't always get it right. I still slip into old patterns. But now, I notice it. And more importantly, I come back to what I've learned. That alone feels like the biggest win of all. If you're still listening, maybe some part of what I shared today hit close to home. Maybe you've been feeling a little stuck, a little numb, a little too fine. And if that's the case, I just want to say this. You are not broken. You're not lazy. You're not behind. You might just be too comfortable. And that's not a character flaw. It's a human tendency. We all drift toward ease. But ease doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it just means we've stopped growing. What changed everything for me wasn't some massive, dramatic reinvention. It was simply starting to do hard things on purpose, choosing discomfort in small, daily ways. And over time, those choices reshaped how I saw myself. So if you're feeling like you're stuck in that weird in-between space where nothing is really wrong, but nothing feels right either, I invite you to try one small thing this week that stretches you. Not to prove anything, not to be impressive, just to feel more alive. Here are a few places to begin. Take a walk without your phone. Say yes to something you'd usually avoid. Wake up earlier and sit in silence for 5 minutes. Choose the harder version of the thing you're avoiding right now. You don't need to change your whole life. You just need to interrupt your patterns. And hey, if this episode gave you something to think about, or made you feel a little less alone in the fog, I'd love it if you subscribed, or even shared it with someone who might need to hear this too. This space isn't just about me talking into a mic. It's about building a community of people who want to wake up, who are done settling for fine, and ready to live with a little more edge, a little more courage, and a lot more presence. Thanks for letting me share my story. Keep going. You're closer than you think. Talk soon.